Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. Okay, hello listeners. Today I have a very special guest with me who has been crushing it in so many categories of romance and who has a new Romantasy book releasing on April 8th that I cannot wait to dive into and hear all about. So I am so excited to welcome to the podcast Juliette Cross. Welcome.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I am too, because I dived into Firebird and absolutely loved it and cannot wait to just sort of dive in and hear all about this book. So for listeners and readers who are just tuning in, can you just start us off and tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Sure. So it is a reimagined ancient Rome where the patricians are dragon shifters. And so this gift was bestowed to them by the gods. And I've kind of reinvented the gods as well. Like anytime they're depicted in the book, they are in what I call half skin form, which is part between dragon and human. So they
Love
have,
it.
wings that are just like sort of fierce looking. They're 15 feet tall. They're sort of monster-esque, obviously. And so it's set in this ancient Rome, and we have a centurion in the prologue. He's a Roman centurion who happens to be the nephew to the new emperor, Igniculus. And he stumbles across this dancing troupe, passing dancing troupe, where Melina is a Dacian dancer. She is from Dacia, which is modern day Romania. And they have an interlude, which I won't speak too much about. Briefly, they meet and they don't see each other for 3 more years. And that's where things get really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, even just from that intro, there's so much to unpack in this story, but
Mhm.
take us back sort of to the beginning. Like, where did even the inspiration to the story or the idea even come from? That you're like,
Um,
this is what I'm writing next.
okay. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you asked that because I have had this nugget of an idea for at least a decade. I don't know. I was sitting on my back patio and I remember talking to my husband, and I'm one of those people who's obsessed with ancient Rome. They're like, "What's your
Okay.
ancient Rome?" And I'm like, "Well, mine is Rome." I love it. I love the history behind it. Find it fascinating. This whole contrast of intelligence and brutality, this very sophisticated culture and this very brutal culture, and I don't know, for me, it's kind of exciting to think about as far as like a setting for any story. Well, I'm also a fantasy writer and I love dragons. And I was just thinking, what if reason they've been able to like conquer so many countries is because they're actually dragons and no one can do them. And so I just had this sort of idea and it sat with me and there were other things going on. So I had, as a matter of fact, at the time I was still writing a very old series that I feel like that was like a million years ago. And so I opened a file on my computer like I always do when I have little ideas. It's still called that. It's called Dragons of Rome on my computer, even though we've retitled the series The Fire That Binds. And that's where it was. And it sat there for the longest time. And I just knew that when I wrote this series, I wanted the cover to just be epic. I wanted like, just I wanted to be gorgeous and beautiful and I was like, okay, I need time for this. And then I read the Stay a Spell series that took all of my time for several years. And then I was itching to get back into the dark stuff. It's so funny because a lot of my readers have found me through Stay a Spell and they're like, she's writing in this new area of like dark romantasy. And I'm like, no, that's actually what I've always written. It's just that I kind of took a little siesta and went, rom-com, and now I'm back and I just, now's the time. I can't even express how excited I am to be doing this with Bramble Tour because their concept for the covers, I'm like, yes, it's like like everything they say, I'm like, yes, that's what I wanted. That's what I envisioned for this series. So I'm thrilled to death that, I waited as long as I did to finally, it's like, it feels very,
Sounds
like,
like the perfect time.
yes,
Everything's
like
coming
Lady
together.
Fortune is really like, in on this.
Yes, that's so true. Well, okay, so I was gonna talk about this. You mentioned it, the cover. I mean, listeners can't tell that I'm holding up the book right now, but this cover is gorgeous, gorgeous. So, yeah, so did you have a say in this? Did they just present it and you're like, "This is it," or tell me more about
They
this?
have been very good about asking me, my opinions and including me in the whole process. Yes, it was actually Monique Patterson she's like, I had this idea. I'm thinking of the artist Carlos Quevedo. And I almost fainted because I've been an admirer of his work for ages, for ages. If anyone is not familiar with them, he also does Sarah J. Maas's Crescent City covers. They're very artistic, and they're they're they reflect the book, but they're also a little, not abstract, but have a little extra artistry to it than being very just simple concrete. And she kept talking about we'll have some dragon iconography, like, things on her. Because like in the book, I mean, she is a slave. She's not wearing all this beautiful, cool jewelry and stuff. But I
Right.
love that idea that reflects the story. And of course, I'd wanted her in a red dress because Julian is a red dragon. So, and they're like, "Yes, perfect, let's do that." And so they were fantastic and including me in the whole process. I mean, all along the way, not just like, "Do you like this idea?" It's okay, that's it. They're like, "This is where we are. Do you like them?" I'm like, "I love it. Like, let's keep going." And so I feel really fortunate. Bramble's been amazing. I am absolutely thrilled to death with the entire process. My editor is amazing there. Like everything has been just, like, too good to be true. I can't even I can't say too many good things about Bramble right now.
That's fantastic. I love how it just sort of like it's it's almost like the shadow of it makes it soft, but it
Mhm.
seems alive, and yet okay, she's gonna be this
I'm
badass
looking at
hero.
it too, so I'm looking
Yeah,
at it with
she's gonna be this like badass heroine, and yet like you said, her jewelry sort of depicts the Roman time period. It's just
yeah.
so good. So yeah, they
Yeah,
just
and they even included the coin she had attached, the Aureus,
hmm
and that's a big symbol in the story, which I was so pleased that they did that, included that on the cover. Yeah, I mean, everything about it, I'm just
So is there anything you can say, or is this sort of spoilers, so just have to read the book about the title? Because I know that sort of comes up in the book, or they just have to read it and find out.
Yeah, it's so funny because, somebody was like, so I'll just tell you, my brother, who doesn't keep track of exactly what I'm writing, but we saw them at Christmas, and it's like, "So what are you writing this? It's a Phoenix book?" I'm like, "No, she's not a Phoenix, not at all." And I know people get that idea when they see Firebird, of course, that has a reference to Phoenix in
Mhm.
fantasy. But no, it is actually a reference to a story about a female dragon, and I'll keep that for those who read the book. And it's obviously you'll see in the prologue a title that a moniker or endearment that Julian gives her. So she's Melina is the Firebird, and you'll have to read on to see why.
Yeah. So Roman times. I love that you picked this time period from it. And you do allude to some gods in at least the Medusa myth in this one, but I
Right.
love how it sort of focuses just on the politics and Caesar and that type of
Yeah.
thing. So is that just because you've always been like I think you said you've just been obsessed with that time
Yeah.
period?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinated by all of it. I mean, you go back and look at it. I was just talking about this with my sons that my sons are all well, most of them are adults. I have one 14-year-old, but we were talking about the Romans and everything, and we were just talking about all of the things that they created. They had indoor plumbing. They had, built these aqueducts to get water into the city. They were so sophisticated, and yet they were so cruel, and so power hungry. And then we had this emperor who was sort of, sort of regulated by the Senate or, but not really,
Mm.
and there's so many of them that got away with so much because of their power. And, I mean, we look at Caligula. Now he was assassinated for it. So we see what happens to those who kind of become too big and too power hungry and too corrupt,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of I'm definitely repeating that in this story. I'm just adding a whole lot of magic to it.
Yes. And like I said, I love the Medusa myth and how that you're sort of tying that in. What made you sort of snag onto that particular one?
Well, I think it's really unfair. I've always just been really kind of upset by the whole Medusa myth. It's like, okay, she's, a priestess for Athena, and it's Minerva in Roman terms. And so Poseidon or Neptune was like, oh yeah, she's hot. So he, violates her, rapes her in the temple, and she gets punished to become this monster. And I'm like, what the hell? I mean, a man wrote this myth. Absolutely. Like, are you kidding me? Right? Like, what?
Right.
That's so unfair. And I know there are like interpretations of it. They're like, oh, well, no, she wasn't punishing her. She was giving her the power to kill men. I'm like, she becomes this like hideous creature that freezes men to death. Okay. That's all awesome and great, but she no longer has her life. Like she's lost her life. And so I always wanted to rewrite that myth so
Mhm.
that she's empowered by Minerva instead of punished by her. And so it was just a perfect backdrop for this story because I wanted to have a reason. I always try to think of when I'm thinking about my fantasy, like where does the magic come from? And so in this story, the gods play a huge role. And that's why I decided, okay, Minerva's the one who gives them these gifts. And so there'll be a myth about each of because Medusa has two sisters.
Mhm.
And so I'll tell a little myth about them as well at the beginning of the other books. So
Nice. Well, let's dive into the Melina because I loved her, the heroine of this story. What do you think readers are going to just love about her?
I think they're gonna love her fiery spirit for sure. She's not, a sort of like a blind fool in that she's like, okay, yeah, I have to obey him and obey everything because like now I'm a slave. She knows that. She's aware of that. But there's something in her that is always defiant of that. She plays the game when she has to, but she also speaks up for herself quite often when that's not necessarily smart in the situation she's in. If you
Yeah.
can like sometimes you just need to like like don't say anything, don't keep your mouth. And but I also love that Julian, he respects her. He respects her from the beginning. And of course, I'm just gonna give this big spoiler. I'm a fated mates girl. So and this is truly a, kind of a beast monster, you
Yes.
know, um
Yeah.
hero, and her dragon knows she's his from the very, very beginning. And that is always, even though he doesn't think those things in his mind in a lot of the story, he knows it. His dragon knows it. He's never going to hurt her. He's always thinking about her in a, I don't say always thinking about her in a respectful way because sometimes he's
Yeah.
thinking not thoughts, but sometimes
Uh,
but, he never when he takes her as a slave, he isn't thinking of enslaving her, and you find out more about him and his past and why that's the case for him. He's not a typical Roman either, even though he's the nephew to the uncle. So, yeah.
yes. And so he has this reputation of being completely brutal. And yet you see this other side of him pretty quickly, right? In different
Yeah.
ways. And I love that sort of duality about him,
Mhm.
um, which is one of the reasons why I liked him. But I think, what do you think? Is that sort of the reason why you think readers will fall for him too? Or,
Yes, I think so, and I think when we talk about Rome, I instantly think of secrets.
hmm,
Always secrets, and there's always plotting going on. And to me, it was just like perfect from the very beginning. He's plotting. Our hero is playing a game. He's
mm,
playing his own. And to me, that's what's exciting because it makes it very dangerous, right? When you get in
right.
the room with the emperor, when you get in the room with all of these other players in the game, it's like who's telling the truth and who's lying and who's holding secrets. And to me, that's fascinating. I love that whole, it's kind of like at the king's court, There's
Right.
always someone plotting to get the king, and there's always, different
And he
reasons.
has to shield his feelings in so many
Absolutely.
different ways, but yet with her, she has to sort of see, wait, there's a different
Yeah,
side. I'm
yeah,
not, yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting.
and he can't trust her right away. I mean, why should he trust her, you
Right.
know?
Mhm.
So he doesn't tell her, what's going on or what he's planning for a while because as we know, we see very early on in the beginning that we have Traitors Gate in the Forum where all the heads of the traitors go, which is right next to the Wall of Victory, where when all the kings that they conquer go. And, a lot of things I've obviously made up for to fit this more brutal Rome. I've borrowed a lot of things. And that's one thing I need to say right now. I am not trying to be a Roman historian. Absolutely, this is inspired by ancient
Yeah.
Rome. I know that certain things weren't at this time period. And, I understand all of those things, but I have to bend it to fit the story. It is a reimagined ancient Rome and is not, a perfect,
Best thing about fiction.
replica, yeah.
Exactly. Well, and I love that you tell this in dual point of view because I liked getting into each of their heads, right?
Mhm.
Do you typically write in dual point of view? I'm trying to remember thinking back through
I
all this.
do. Yeah,
Um,
I do. I've tried to my first series was only from the heroine's point of view, and I don't know, I found it difficult. I like to be in his head. I like to have the reader know what he's thinking, especially when he's holding off those feelings,
mhm.
so that we see the pining. We really get to feel it from how he's feeling, from his point of view, And also we get to know more about the plot of what's really going on, you know?
Right.
If it was only from her point of view, we wouldn't get nearly as much intrigue that we get when he's having his secret meetings with this person and with Trajan and Trajan's, grandfather Gaius and all of we know right away, like, "Oh my gosh, okay. This is what he's really all about. Okay, all right, I'm on board, Uh,
Right. Right.
and it's
Exactly.
to me, it makes it more exciting that build up toward what's gonna happen at the end of the book. So,
So, in addition to Julian and Melina, there's some really evil people in this book.
there are some serious evil I'm gonna pull my curtains really quickly, sorry. There's some serious, yeah, evil villains in here, and so Igniculus, the emperor, he's our big bad, right?
Big
Um
bad. Yes.
I was
It comes
really
with some trigger warnings, people.
oh, yes, big trigger warning. As a matter of fact, it's so funny you say that because when I first wrote this scene at the feast at the palace, I was preparing myself that, like, my editor was gonna be like, I don't know if we can do this, whatever." But, like, she totally wasn't, and I was like, "Woo, okay, they're gonna let that fly." I'm more like that because I needed to show how villainous he was,
Yes.
how absolute evil he was and enjoyed his power. He enjoys power and he enjoys inflicting pain on others. And not in a hey sexy, I like a little, no, like it's part of his
Brutal.
control. And it's also part of, and I think I talk about that he's twisted. And part of that is honestly, if we're going to go into the mysticism of this world, he was born in half skin. And that's a little bit of a secret that you find later on that all dragons, Roman dragons, the patricians, they're born in human form or dragon form, which is normal. And it just kind of tells them which is going to rule them more in their lives. But those born in half skin are considered twisted, and Igniculus was. So, yeah. And then we have Cyprian. Good old
Just as dirty and awful. Yeah.
yeah, he's just as disgusting and foul. And yeah, I really wanted the readers to hate them. So I achieved that.
I think you did.
So, I don't want to give any spoilers what happens to them in the end because I know we
No,
still
I did. I found them very easy to hate and not like. And so you're rooting for Julian from the get go to be like, please get these guys. Yes.
there's nothing good about them. It's not like this is a morally great hero. There's gonna be a morally great hero in the next book. No. No, they're the villains of the story. And I really wanted to show a division as well in Rome. There's a division, not just with the humans versus dragons, but just like in real Rome, there were senators. Look at Julius Caesar, the whole thing. Who were against Julius Caesar. There were, and then we have the Brutus and Cassio and all of these, historical people because they believed he was trying to be a tyrant, which he was. But, and so they killed him brutally. And so I wanted to kind of show that there are factions even within the patricians that are against each other. It's not just, humans against dragons here. It's more complex than that. And so, and even I think, when we see the conspirators finally, and I'm not going to give any big spoilers, but when we see the conspirators together toward the end of the book, we see that they're not all motivated by just like goodwill, like, oh, yes, we want to free Rome. We want to free all the slaves. Well, no, they all want that. Some of them just want to keep their own families safe and to keep their own interests safe,
Right.
because they feel Nicholas is becoming too powerful, and he is, and he is. So, so yeah. But of
And
course, my hero is motivated by more altruistic, reasons because he falls in love with a slave. So,
right,
of course, his heart's
right.
going to be there.
So let's talk about the dragons because, I mean, dragons and romantasy, I mean, it's having its heyday right now, right? And we've been obsessed with werewolves too and vampires, which you've given us and covered. And so now we're into dragons.
Thank you.
So tell me more about just how they came to your mind and this idea of the half skin and stuff. I could just sort of picture them as I was reading it. I loved it. And then how they would just come out. But tell us more about the
Yeah.
dragon.
Well, I don't know where the idea of the half skin came into play, except that when I was writing that first chapter, I was thinking, okay, they're going into battle. Why would they go into battle as humans? And then if they go in as dragons, they're just gonna burn and crush everything. But they want slaves. They want to conquer the people, and they want to bring them back and keep them as slaves. That's property. And I think I couldn't talk about that as well. That their greed stems from dragons like possessions. They like treasure, and slaves are considered treasure. And so that's where that part kind of came to me. I was like, well, I need them to be in this space in between, and half skin kind of came to me. So, and I'm a monster romance reader. I love monster romance. So it's like, basically that's what they look like. It's just this, yeah, this monster romance semi-hero. And honestly, the color of the houses. So this is the funniest thing. This is how that came to be. I was trying to think of, what kind of dragons there would be in this world. And so my two older sons, they're both dungeon masters for D&D. And so I was talking to my son Jacob. I'm like, okay, brainstorm with me. I was like, I need to think about these dragons. He's like, well, you could do it like in D&D. They have like colors. I'm like, wait. I was like, wait, what? Like, let's talk
Cool.
about that. So then we started talking about the colors of dragons and how they each have different powers or whatever. And then I was like, okay, I need to establish what colors I would use and then who would be the most powerful. And of course, we have the Romulus and Remus story, but it's reimagined where it's not a she wolf, it's a she dragon. And I was thinking, of course, where she would, so we have this black and this red dragon would be the first two, Romulus and Remus. And then that brought about, yeah. And so then I just started thinking about, well, how could we come up with the other dragons? And I thought of a little history. So that's why I kind of put that little glossary at the beginning. So we kind of see
Yeah.
how they
'Cause
all.
there's 5 houses, is that correct? Or 5 dragon?
Oh my gosh, now you're gonna make me okay, there's red, black, blue, purple, we have the Sephiroth line, um,
Maybe not.
the green, purple, amethystis, purple,
More.
and
Yeah.
then we have
Oh my
we
gosh.
have the Vicus, which is the white dragons, and they're an anomaly, sort of like a chromosome mix-up, an
Mhm.
albino, and that's for the priestesses. So, yeah.
And
Uh,
there's a white dragon in this one that I really need to know more about in these next coming books. I'm
you're
just
gonna
gonna
see
say
more.
that.
My
I need
god.
more.
Yeah, you're gonna see more of her. She's more important than I think people are gonna realize, and she's only gonna be brief until the end,
I am
and
yes. Okay.
yeah,
So
I had big plans for her.
I felt though, like, for people who are diving into this, like, you can this is it can definitely be read as a standalone. I feel like it was
Yeah,
sort of a complete story, but then, like, okay, there's so much more, like, to come. Do
right.
you so how big is this series gonna be? Like, do you have all the books already sort of plotted out, or you just sort
Oh,
of
yeah.
going as you go? Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, I have them all I'm a plotter
Okay.
100%, and I know the final scene in the final book, and I cannot wait to get there, but I'm also one
Oh,
of those people that, like, when I write, I have to write, like, I'm a linear person, so I write every scene. I'm not one of those who writes and then leaves a space and comes back, like, that would drive me insane, so I just, like, think about those scenes, and, like, if quotes come to me or something like that, I'll put them in a little like, while I'm driving, sometimes, like, a quote will come to me. Something came to me for book 2, this
mhm.
week, and I immediately put it in my notes in my phone. I was like, "Just save that for later." But, generally, I just wait till I get that scene to write it, and, yeah, so there's gonna be 3. I'm writing Bloodsinger right now. Book 2 is Bloodsinger, and book 3 is Death Rider. So,
Oh my god.
super excited about all 3 of them, and I know you'll notice there are 4 sisters in the beginning, so yeah, you'll
Okay.
have to see what happened.
Be prepared. Yes.
Yes, yes, more heartache and hardship, yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, it was fascinating to read. I'm so excited to continue on it more. I feel like I love your writing and how you can just sort of jump into like contemporary or more just paranormal or this romantasy or mixing them all. Like, are there any categories of romance you think you'll dive into next that you haven't yet? Like, why choose or romantic suspense, or you just love it all, or this is like your bread and butter? Like,
Well, I don't know that I love reading a romantic suspense, and I love reading historical romance. Historical romance was, like, my first I guess, my gateway drug into romance. Like, I love historical romance very much, but to me, that would be so difficult because there's so many rules and parameters, and it's funny, it's the same thing with writing contemporary because 'cause I've written a couple of contemporary books, and I enjoyed writing them, but they were so difficult for me to write because, there's no vampires jumping out. There's no, like it's just like, there are real world rules I cannot break, and
gotcha.
I find that confining, and I think for most fantasy writers, it's the same. I, was talking to some last night actually on a panel, and we were just talking about how it's like I like that it's as far as my imagination can go, you know? And I like using magic. I don't know, it's just what excites me the most. I'll never write I love that reverse harem is out there for all those who love reverse harem and white shoes and stuff like that. Like that's fantastic. But it's not me. I am just like a one-on-one person. I have
Fated dates, like you said, yeah.
yeah, yes, I'm a fated mates girl, like 100%, and so that's just a personal thing for me, so I'll always write that. I know that, I've actually written an MM short story for it's in, Witchy Wonderland for the Stay a Spell series, and I do have plans to write a full-length MM in the, Southern Charms spinoff of Stay a Spell, so I'm excited about that because I haven't written a full length.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love MM. So, that's probably as far as I'm gonna stretch my wings, so to speak. The only thing I think I will continue to do is try to look at different settings in the world, in history for fantasy to come into play, for monsters to emerge. I already actually have 2 ideas following that are totally unrelated to this, which are, parts in history where monsters could have been involved. So,
That's true. I guess I didn't really think about that with paranormal fantasy, that you have this greater just freedom to write whatever without even those constriction of contemporary romance to be like, well, you can't really do like travel from here to here or whatever.
yeah,
Like, that's
yeah.
exciting.
To me,
Yeah.
that's what makes it exciting is that, like, I can really let my imagination run wild and but once I create those rules for that world, I have to stay within the own world, but I've made them up,
Right.
like
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
or I can figure out, well, how could this happen? Oh, we'll have a potion for that. I'll get that, or whatever, so
Yes. Yes. Fascinating. Awesome. Well, everybody now is going to go and pre-order Firebird for April 8th because they just have to go read about these dragons and the Roman times and whatnot. But is there anything else you feel like we need to know about this book, or or then also tell listeners where they can find you online to make sure they're stay in the know for when the next book's release?
Oh, definitely. So Instagram is my favorite social media site. I love Instagram. I love the bookstagrammers on there, mainly because I love pretty pictures. Like they always post the prettiest pictures. But yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. The regulars. But as far as like Firebird, I think there's a lot more exciting announcements to come about it. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see those as they develop. Can't say too much. But I think the only thing I would say is that this is definitely, if you're one of those people who enjoys watching things like Rome or, House of Dragons or whatever, and it's not exactly like those things. It's not exactly like those things, but it has the essence of it. Mhm. Like the show Rome also, I'm a huge, huge fan. If anybody's watched that old HBO series, it should not have ended when it did. They could have gone on forever. I still get mad about it. Like, why did they end this? There was so much more they could have done. And I think my own like thirst for just like more cool stories set in ancient Rome, and of course, obviously, my love for fantasy has you know, created this world. And so I'm just excited. I'm so excited about where it's going. I'm actually really excited about Bloodsinger and Death Rider because the sisters are all very different. Their powers are all very different. And I will say this, because I think when we see Melina in the beginning, it's like, okay, her power seems small, but it's growing by the end of the book, and it's going to grow even more throughout the series. So there's something about the sisters, and especially as they reunite, that their powers will grow. And that's all kind of comes back to the Medusa myth and Minerva, is that they're supposed to work, they're more
Mhm.
powerful together. And of course, I'm all about female empowerment, as
I
most women
love that.
are. And that is one thing I would hope that people get from this story. Yes, it's a fun, wild ride, but I also want to emphasize, female empowerment and also the power of love, obviously. So, and our heroes.
And there you have it, folks. Don't miss Firebird by Juliette Cross, which releases April 8th, especially if you love romantasy books or ancient Rome. Definitely be sure to check it out. And if you want to hear even more from Juliette about why she loves reading romance, who her favorite authors are, and some of her favorite books and more, then be sure to join the She Reads Romance Books book club, because all members get instant access to my exclusive extended video interviews with authors who join me on the podcast. So you can check out Juliette's extended interview and more when you join today at shereadsromancebooks.com/book club. Thanks so much for joining me today for this episode. And until next time, happy reading, because life is better with a love story. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.